Welcome to Secular Sessions, the show that explores the experiences of atheists in India. I'm your host, Raj, and in this show, I will be talking to fellow atheists from India about their personal journeys and experiences of living as a non-believer in a country where religion plays a significant role in society. Secular Sessions is a bilingual show with a conversation taking place in both Hindi and English. By doing so, I aim to reach a wider audience and shed light on the experiences of atheists from all parts of the country. I hope that this show will provide a platform for atheists to share their stories and for viewers to gain a deeper understanding of what it means to be an atheist in India. Join us as we explore the world of atheism and secularism in India on Secular Sessions. Hello friends, today we are joined by Anish, who is preparing for his chartered accountancy. So he's studying a lot. Let's see what he has to say about atheism. Hey Anish, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
I'm doing good as well. Tell me, how did it work for you? Like, how did you thought about being an atheist, or how did you get exposed with an atheism?
I always struggled with, accepting what was culturally norms in my family. Like my family is Hinduistic, and mostly what led me to atheism is superstition, not religion itself.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. How did that work?
My family has a lot of superstitious beliefs. For example, do not pay with your left hand, do not do this, do that. These small things that seem harmless at first, but they build up to some conclusion, which leads to something like Vastu, which leads to other nonsense.
Okay.
So these small things, they started to bug me. The more I start to question them, the more I was like, being hammered by the same answer because it's in our text, because some Rishi Muni said so, because XYZ. The answer was never a particular reason you could ground on scientific manner.
Okay. Cool.
These are always like ridiculous reasons, or because I said so.
Yeah, that happens a lot, right? Like parents say it's right because I've said so.
Yeah, that sort of got the gears turning. And the more I started reading, the more I started studying them, the more I started looking into them, the more I was like, nope, something is wrong here. Something doesn't add up.
So what did you start reading?
I started reading different books, man. I started reading Richard Dawkins and all of those guys. But the more I read those books, the more I realized they weren't talking about Hinduism. All of the arguments that mostly I hear are always against monotheism. So polytheism generally can avoid a lot of those, backdrop issues that are presented in monotheism. Polytheism just says that, oh yeah, this God, we have different gods for different purposes. Therefore, so and so, so and so. So,
yeah,
they simply avoid a lot of the contentions that are brought up in monotheistic religions.
Yes.
So the more I was starting to look for more Indian sources. So I started mostly what I did was I picked up Gita and I picked up some Vedas. I did not read all of them. I did not have the time to.
Yeah.
Life got in the way. So I read a couple of Vedas and I read translated versions also. I cannot even guarantee that I read the original text. I only read translated versions of it.
Well, you did more than some of the current Rishi Munis do. So don't give yourself some slack, man. And so after reading all of that, did you went back to, does your parents know you're an atheist?
Yeah, my parents do know.
Okay, and how did they react?
They did not like it. My father was mostly okay with it. My mother, however, she did not sit with it.
Okay. The more these interviews I'm doing, the more I realize in parents, generally the father is okay. And it's the mother who has some problems.
Actually, in my family, the thing is a little less towards my personal belief. Rather, it's more like you need to project yourself as religious rather than be religious.
Oh, I see. How does that work? Like
in family relations, act as if you're religious.
Oh, I see.
Whether you believe or not doesn't matter. Like my father literally told me that it doesn't matter whether you believe or not. You don't have to believe. My father literally told me that. Present yourself as if you believe. When
So
you
they
go to
want,
some family member's house, they do some puja, sit. Shut
okay,
up and sit.
I see, I see. I think they are just trying to keep peace in the family. So I think that's all
Yes.
right.
Yes.
Because I do it as well. I have to do acting.
Yeah.
Not that I meet a lot of my family members, so it's not that bad for me.
Yeah. No, the
Um,
thing is they say that to maintain good relations, it helps in business long term.
oh, I see. I can imagine how that would be beneficial. So
And
I'm
plus,
good.
when you live in a conservative society, it kind of also shows a bit more of a positive note, positive in quotation marks.
Yeah. So when you started reading all of that and started in your mind, started challenging the beliefs rooted in you, how was it? Were you scared to let go of God, or were like how did it pan out?
I never had a strong belief ever. I was
Okay.
always into so many thoughts. I was generally overthinking and I was always with myself most of my childhood. Did not have many friends. So I was always into books. I had read so many scientific fictions at that point. It made sense from a science fiction point of view. Like I could see a science fiction book written that
Okay.
actually, like I could literally picture this as the most amazing 2000, 3000 year old science fiction.
I see.
That made a lot more sense to me than this really happening. I could literally take it for a metaphor and
Yeah.
accept it rather
Mhm.
than take it happening in reality.
It's interesting that you say that. Now I think about it, that people at that time wanted something from life because I mean the people didn't live as much, right? So they wanted something to save themselves, and they wrote these elaborate stories because it could be a part of science fiction, like what if in future this will happen and all that. And
I mean, whenever you think events rolling down, you can clearly picture how one event led to, like, a creation of a story.
Mhm.
You and me conversing itself is creating a story right here. If we try to write it out, we can write out a story about a conversation in and of itself. Details will not be exact.
Mhm.
We may mess up in the details somewhere down the line. We may add details, remove details, so on and so forth. We may even make something mystical, like there was some magical moment, so on and so forth. We can add bullshit into it.
Mhm.
But there was an event,
Mhm.
thunder striking, which caused people to get scared, which caused people to be like, okay, something is going on there. I do not understand. So I'm going to pray to some god, Indra,
Yeah.
so on and so forth. Indra created.
Mhm.
So I believe these are stories are basically manifestations of certain events that are more naturalistic that we did not understand and we created them
Mhm.
to make sense of it.
Yeah. So since you're able to leave it easily, why do you think some other people have hard time leaving it?
Identity. Religion becomes an identity to people.
Okay.
I believe it's an identity.
Mhm.
When people add their own identity to a religion, every idea within the religion becomes a part of their identity because they've oriented their life around it
Mhm.
and they have made it so that their life is impacted by every religious decision.
Mm. That's interesting.
Like they have followed the religion for so long that it has become part of them.
True. And leaving the religion would be like leaving
The
your
religion
own
means leaving
identity.
a part of their identity behind.
Yeah. Mm, that's really interesting. I do agree with that. I don't think I can fault it because when I was religious and I started thinking about all of this, because up until 28 or 29, I didn't even think about, um, if God can be not real until somebody asked me, why do I believe in God? And that's when I actually thought about it. And before that, I was all for like scientific methods and stuff, but in my mind, it was all compartmentalized. So one
Yeah,
thing didn't know what's happening to the other thing. But as soon as they asked me, and I did had a good think for like a week or two, and I was like, well, I don't really know, apart from my parents saying that, you should do it. And I had to struggle with the thought of, you know, if I leave it, there are so many things that I believe in. For example, if I die, then I'll meet my family or some of the dead relatives that I actually like, and that chance goes away. So, did it bother you or any of that stuff?
Mm, like it got me thinking, but it never bothered me in the way other people get bothered by it.
Okay.
Because because after you're dead, it's all like this is the quote. If I'm not wrong, if I'm not wrong, Christopher Hitchens said it or somebody said it
Mhm.
that after I die,
Yeah.
if there is a God, the best thing he can do is kill my soul. Like if there is something called a soul, and if I die, I don't want heaven or hell. Eternal heaven or eternal hell is absolute damnation in either way.
Yeah.
Kill it. I
Mm.
want it permanently to be ended. I heard that and it resonated with me. So from as soon as I heard that, it made sense. Like after I die, I don't want anything else after it.
Mm.
I'm done with life.
Yeah, I've got one shot at it, so I better do it now.
If I'm dead, there's no point in me going in heaven and being like spending eternity there. I'm going to do nothing there. I've done nothing yet, then I'm going to do nothing there. I just want it to end. If I'm dead here, I want it to end.
That's hilarious. One of the videos that I've done when I just started YouTubing was heaven. So I made a video on that, and I had this thought of if, I am, say, I have a relative that I really like or a friend that I really like. He believes in God, I don't, and then he goes to heaven and I go to hell. Would he, because he's my friend, right? We gel well. Would he be still happy even though he's in heaven, knowing that I'm in hell? I'm assuming when you go to heaven, you have all the knowledge and how things are working and how people are doing on earth and whatever. And when I thought about it, I find it sickening. Like, if I'm in heaven and I know someone who's in hell, I don't think I can be happy. And if I'm happy at that point, is it really me or is it some projection of me? So, anyways, I'm losing the essence regardless. So, that thought really tinkled my mind. Um,
Yeah, it's just a very simple thing. You are in heaven and your father is in hell, your mother is in hell, anybody you care about is in hell.
mhm.
That point, that point, if you like somebody you care about, you care deeply about is in hell.
Yeah.
That point, I don't know, but I would literally think of grabbing God's throat or something around those lines.
What the F are you doing?
Like seriously, like, are you high? What are you smoking? And where can
Yeah.
I get some?
Mm. So, in your relatives, nobody knows that you're an atheist, or do you have to keep your life a secret?
No, people in my family do know I don't believe
Okay.
because there were events that happened where I was literally like, I cannot take it anymore. And I just, when I was younger, I literally gave up religion when I was 12, 13, 14, something around those lines.
Oh, wow, that's really interesting. Quite mature at
So,
that age. I had no idea if I can even if I even have the option to do it.
no, as I said, my father never forced me into religion, but my mom was always like, do this, do that, do this, do that.
Mhm.
And the superstitious aspects that they presented drove me away from a young age.
Mhm.
And reading more on it, the more I read on it, the more I studied it, the more I was reading books like from age 6, 7, like those were the things that guided me through my childhood.
Nice.
Like literally for most part of my life, I've literally been around books more than people.
I wished I would have read more books. I hate reading books. Like I did my study books and all that because I had to. But
I
in
never read
general,
study books either. I never
so
liked reading study books either. They felt more like a chore than a entertaining thing.
yeah, but I think when people start reading books from young age, when you're reading a book, I heard from a friend who says it's really addictive.
Yes,
Like you can leave everything else and then you can just start reading.
I
Uh,
forgot to eat. I remember my mother telling me one day,
mhm.
like when I was 8, 9, she went out to get groceries or somewhere. I
Yeah.
was reading a book. It was, and like it was 7 p.m. The food was ready. She told me, go get your food. It was 10 o'clock by the time she returned, and I was hungry. and I did not care. I wanted to finish the book.
Oh,
I was
wow.
250 pages in, and I was like 50 pages more, and I'm done with this. Next book I'll pick from the library next day.
Wow.
So yeah,
Any book that you would recommend for somebody who wants to get into reading books? Like they haven't read a book and they're dumb like me. So
I
any
don't
book.
consider people like you dumb, but people who don't read books are not dumb. But what genres do you prefer? What do you prefer reading?
I haven't been able to get into any genre. Like I haven't read books at all. I like the audio visual form, like documentary and stuff. But I do know that books have a lot more information in them. So for example, I really like the show Game of Thrones, but I started reading the book and I don't think I finished even one page of it.
Okay, I finished the Song of Ice and Fire quite a while back.
I would assume so.
I read it
So
when I was 12, 13.
yeah,
Around the
so
time I left religion.
mm, so I really want to ask. I should go to atheism, but because you mentioned it, you finished Game of Thrones when you were 12 and 13, yeah?
Yeah, A Song of Ice and Fire, the book.
The Song of
There are
Ice.
6, 7 books. I haven't read the last book. Still have to buy that book. I still have to buy it.
Okay. Um, you were young, and in that book, there is quite a bit of gory details and stuff. How did it impact you?
To be honest, I had read enough that it didn't change a thing. Like, it got my gears thinking,
Mhm.
and the more I read about it, the more I understood stuff, and it actually got me interested in understanding what sex actually meant, and
Oh, wow.
what it was. What I had a very terrible misconception of sex, and
Don't we all?
literally it's the most garbage information you have in your head,
Hmm.
that once I finished reading all those gory details, so on and so forth, it was like, wait, this is how we procreate. I started reading a few more details. Like I went to the Wikipedia rabbit hole,
Hmm.
and I actually read quite a lot of things about
Yeah.
the human reproductive system, so on and so forth. Something that I would have never learned in my education.
Oh,
Nobody
yes,
would
that's
have told me about stuff like that. So I don't consider gory details to be anything to be frowned upon. If you can stomach stuff like that,
mhm.
you should read it. It's fun to get your gears thinking.
Yes, but any easy book that is easy to read. Because I know there's language in the books which is really high versus
I
a
mean,
very.
if you're really into science fiction, then Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy will be like the top recommendation.
Oh, nice.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It is
Yeah.
like the most best way to explain how science fiction is supposed to be written. That book has it all.
Oh, wow.
Like
No,
any element of science fiction you want to present, that book has it.
cool. Oh, no, that's awesome because I would like to get into reading, but then again, it's just so much to read and do. I even thought about reading Bhagavad Gita as an atheist just to see how it is.
You
And
should.
I did try to read it, man. It's just for me, it's boring.
I mean, it's boring as hell. I won't lie to you, it's really boring.
Yeah.
But the thing is, once you start thinking, rather than this passage itself, you start thinking why that passage exists, then you can make it a little more fun for yourself.
Mm, okay.
Why does that passage exist? Like, what was the guy who wrote it was thinking? In a naturalistic way, what could be the explanation for this whole sequence of passages? Why this after this? Like, that could get your gears thinking to the point where you don't start to see it as fact. You start to see what was the intention behind it, or how it
Uh,
was convincing to them.
that's very interesting perspective because
That was how I actually got through reading it.
man, it must have taken a lot from you since you already like reading books and you're saying that you had to go through it. Um,
Yeah. The
so
thing is, because the second you start to doubt it, the second you start to think that, the second it's presented to you as reality and you start to doubt its reality, it becomes harder to stomach it.
true.
Because you start questioning every line you start to read. And when you question, you start to go on a deeper rabbit hole. The more deeper you go, the more you start to realize, I'm not even reading the book anymore. I'm thinking about something else.
That happens a lot. Like, it's interesting that you mentioned that because anything, I was talking to one of my friend and he was telling that, the superstition thing about like you should not so he wanted scissors and I said, here you go from my hand, and he said, no, you shouldn't give somebody scissors and knife in hand. You need to put it on the table and then somebody else grabs it from the table. And I just went, why is that? And they said, they say. And I'm like, who are they? And like, I don't know, it's just said that it's not nice because it'll cause fight. And I'm like, do you really think if there's a fight between us, it'll be because of a scissor or a knife? Because, there are a lot more reasons I can find literally now that I could have a fight with you, but I'm not. So
Yeah. But the thing is, even if you think about that story, the whole scissors thing, scissors and knife, how do you think that superstition started?
personally, I think people were scared. Like some of the things were
I
genuine.
genuinely believe that there was some guy who had a knife in his hand and the other guy asked a knife and he was like, lay, and just went through the hand. And the other guy was like, dude.
Yeah, they sliced it or something.
Yeah, something like that must have happened. Like, I genuinely believe like, something like that must have happened for, the superstition to exist.
True, true. The when you were saying that, I just thought of an example. Like in my family, they said, "Do not cut your nails in the night." And I had thought about it, like, how could it have started? Because back in the day, there were no lights, right? And then
Yeah, back then
they
there no
didn't.
electricity. So
Yeah,
basically, you could
yeah.
chop your whole leg off or something like that.
Well, there were no nail cutters as well. So nail cutters are relatively safer than using a knife, and people used to
Yeah,
either eat their nails or, I'm assuming, chop it with knife, because I've seen some of my older relatives using a knife and perfectly carving their nail. It's amazing to see.
yeah.
And
So,
you don't want to do it in the night when there is no light and electricity and stuff.
yeah, so you can clearly map out like there was some logic to it, but right now it's useless.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've said it in my older videos. There's no point in using a CRT TV these days when you got LCD TVs. It's absolutely
Yes.
dumb.
For example, my parents, the first superstition that actually drove me nuts was basically do not pay with your left hand. I'm left-handed.
You're
And in
botched.
my
You, the whole life
and
you're gonna be botched.
yeah, in my entire family lineage,
Mhm.
I am the first left-handed guy.
Yep.
Like in my entire family lineage, I am the first guy who's born left-handed.
Yep.
So, like, and my parents were like, "Do not play with your left hand." Are you kidding me? That's my dominant hand.
Yeah. Next time you're gonna say, don't write with your left hand. Like, why?
When my father told this to me when I was 2 months old.
Mhm.
My mom was handing things to me in my right hand. I would shift it to my left hand because it was more comfortable in it. And my mother took me to the doctor. Something is wrong with him.
Sorry, man. I don't mean to laugh, but it's hilarious.
I mean, it's hilarious. Obviously, I was laughing at it.
Yeah.
Like, what? Something is wrong with me. Seriously?
Mm. No, that is true. If people don't understand you, they like, if I think about your mom, she didn't understand it at that time, right? And then she just wanted you to be safe. So you
Because
can,
right-handedness is innate. Therefore, whenever you see a rule that says do not do something with your left hand or do something with your right hand, it simply means that tools were always made for right-handed people.
yes, like there are
Tools were
some,
made for right-handed people. Therefore, every superstition that talks about tools with right hand is always because tools were always made for right-handed people. Left-handed people were always 10% of the population. Therefore, they were always pretty low on the count itself.
yes, it's hard to find a left-handed guitar than a
Yes.
right-handed guitar.
In fact, even in language, we can find it. Basically, those countries that had pen and paper that had paper invented early on,
Mhm.
they started writing left to right. But those people who never invented pen and paper initially started writing from right to left because they were carving on stones, which is why Arabic is carved right to left, written right to left, and Hindi is written left to right.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. Where
Because
did you
whenever
hear that?
you carve with your right hand.
Uh-huh.
I read it in some book. I don't remember where.
Because, yeah, I'm trying to get my head around it. And this is the first
When
time I've heard it.
because when
So,
you carve, because most people were right-handed, so when they carve, they were carving from right to left. It was much more easier to carve. But when you write, you don't want to smear your hand over what the letters you've written, so you write right, left to right.
okay.
Which is why
Yeah.
for left-handed people, we turn our copies halfway around to right, so that we don't end up smearing it.
Mm. Man, that's really interesting information. I'm gonna dig into it more. Won't take much time in this conversation, but that's really good to know. Um,
Yeah,
how do you think the society will be different if there are more thinkers, more critical thinkers?
I don't think it's going to be much more beneficial than it is now,
How is that?
personally, because the thing is that our society doesn't function with thinkers. It
When
doesn't
you say
function with
our
thinkers.
society, you're just talking about India or your particular region?
Every society, you pick any society,
Mhm.
the general consensus is thinkers are people who come up with ideas, who come up with policies.
Yep.
They're just people who brainstorm stuff.
Yep.
But most thinkers are not doers. There are a few exceptions to the rule, but most thinkers are not doers.
Hmm.
Most thinkers are two left feet, which
Okay.
is an interesting thought in and of themselves when you talk about left and right connotations.
I genuinely don't like I've really tried to get my head around this left, right, and all of that stuff. And I have talked to many people about it. I genuinely either I don't give a shit about it, or it's just like it doesn't get into my head. And to be honest, I don't find it interesting because even the people who say they're leftist sometimes say completely opposite things and vice
True,
versa. And
true.
it just confuses the hell out of me. And I'm like, just tell me the context, what you're talking about, and then we'll decipher it. That makes
Yeah,
it easier for me.
yeah. But the thing is that the entire perspective,
Mhm.
the entire thing, I even lost the train of my thought right now.
Oh, sorry about that. I have the habit of interrupting. But you were explaining
It's
about,
fine.
yeah, you were explaining about how the society will be the same because
Yeah, the
thinkers aren't
society won't
doers.
change even if critical thinkers increase because critical thinkers, for most part, are people who think a lot, who ponder on policies, ponder on stuff they can do better, ponder
Mhm.
on yeah, what could go wrong and what is correct, what is not correct, so on and so forth. More like philosophers in the sense.
Okay.
Like you could say Socrates was a very interesting philosopher, so on and so forth. Dude could not go into a fucking battle. Sorry, it is not good.
It's all good, man. Yeah.
Dude could not pick a spear if his life depended on it.
Mm, I see.
In that sense, like doing stuff requires people who are less critical thinkers.
Would you say it is because if they are actually doing stuff, they'll be thinking a lot more about it, like how they can do it better?
No, because in most critical thinkers, the thought of failure comes really quick.
Okay, what if I fail?
Yeah, the thought of failure is really adamant because when you start to think of all possibilities, if you're able to think of more possibilities than other people, you start to think more possibilities to fail in the first place.
Yeah,
So to
but
get around that, it requires a lot of mental work.
mm, I'm not sure because I think of myself as a critical thinker. I used to think of it as a critical thinker before
Again, I'm
I,
not saying that everybody has that issue.
yeah.
At least I personally have that issue. So and based on how many statistics that I have read,
Mhm.
is that people who are critical thinkers, who are like, able to think through stuffs a lot, they are generally less, people who are much more working with their hands or, getting on the ground and doing stuff.
Well, if you put it in this way, because before starting this channel, I wanted to do something and I thought about it for like 6, 7 months. And again, what if I failed and what if this happened? Thinking all the negative things. And then I
Yeah,
was
but
like,
again, the answer would be is that you took 6 to 7 months.
yeah,
Compare that to someone who's less critical thinking. They might even start within 1 or 2 months. What if they would think too much about it? that's the point contrast I'm trying to make. It is the time that people who don't think critically take versus time critical thinkers take to jump into
But
something.
that time taken is
It may
minimizing the
benefit. I'm not saying
yeah
that
yeah
that is beneficial. That may benefit. That may not. So on. So those are other factors. Every other factor plays in. But generally speaking, in a dynamic business environment where life is changing in a rapid way, new technology is coming in. People are, you know, stuff is happening instantly. Where instant decisions are to be taken. Most critical thinkers will withhold decisions until they're sure.
mm.
They don't want to commit to a decision so quick.
Yeah, they won't be able to think on their feet. Is
No, they can think on their feet, but they would be second guessing their judgments a lot more than other people.
that
Moving
is
forward
true.
becomes a lot more difficult.
Yeah, it is hard to take an action because every time I'm thinking, like, should I do it? Should I say this word in the video? Should I, all of those thoughts do come in.
Yeah, those things that come to mind are really much more adamant.
Yeah, because
Taking quick decisions becomes a lot more difficult aspect when you think a lot.
when I put a video out, I do think like, have I said it out too loud or should I use the right phrases? I want to make it nice, but at the same time, I want to make it challenging. So you have these thoughts, and at the end, the result sometimes is like, oh, this is not what I expected.
Yeah, so the thing is, you end up and after you put it out, even after you do it, at least for me personally, after I do something, I look at it and I'm like, I could have done that better.
Oh,
And I start to
definitely.
see better.
The
Like
big
I could have done that better.
yeah, the biggest room in life is the room of improvement. Room for
So
improvement, sorry.
so that happens, and once you start thinking on that, once you start jotting, okay, how could I have done that better? You're like, you're not doing it, you're thinking about it.
Yeah, well, that's how you learn, right? And
Yeah,
I think sometimes you
that is the
can't
thing
just,
with most critical thinkers that I feel with most critical thinkers is that we are good at thinking stuff out, but while doing it, we are far slower than other people.
yeah,
We are
like,
far slower. We may be better, like we may minimize risk. We may, have something better, but the fact of somebody jumping in to figure it out.
so somebody trial and error versus
Yes,
someone who calculate everything in their head.
yeah. So the trial and error method generally for physical purposes, for living life, is far better of a choice for 60% to 70% of the time than thinking through. Because what happens when you're doing trial and error, your brain automatically runs through all the scenarios within the context itself. So those people can make switch quick decisions, which
Mhm.
I struggle with a lot because I need to think it.
So you're
I tinker
saying,
with every single thing a
yeah,
lot.
when you're mentioning it, for some reason, I'm thinking about Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory, because he's quite a good critical thinker in the show.
Yeah,
And but when it actually needs to do it, like he knows the theory of everything, and but when he starts to
doing
do
it
it,
seems
it's
so difficult.
yes, you learn a lot when you actually do something.
Yeah, you start to realize that this wasn't what I thought it was.
Yeah. Oh man, it happens a lot, like the whole Dunning-Kruger effect. It's just
Yeah,
amazing. And I did make a video like in when I started YouTube, it's like, "Oh, I'm really good at speaking and stuff. But speaking in front of a computer versus speaking in public is completely different. And even me taking your interview, that's a completely different skill set. And I just thought I just have to talk to the person, right? But to make it sound natural, it's just completely different dynamics than you think what it is. But when you actually do it, then you definitely get more exposure. uh the
yeah,
way I make a decision, from the past 6 7 years, or maybe more, no, actually 11 12 years now. Anyways, if I have to make a decision now, what I do is I take a little book and I write benefits and disadvantages of doing what I'm doing, right? So I write everything down because what I've understood is, if you are just thinking and not letting your thoughts out of your mind, it just stays in your mind. And
it
even though
stays.
if you have already thought about something, and you're thinking the next thought, somehow the old thought will come into the next thought, and then it's just like a snake chasing its own tail. And then it just gets really hodgepodge. So if you just write it on a book, you're letting that thought out of your mind. It also helps me to sleep sometimes because I'm like, I have so many thoughts. I could do this, and this. But because I keep thinking about it and I want to do it there and then, but sleep is important as well. So I just write it out, and then I'm just letting my mind know that, okay, I've remembered it and I will think about it later. So my mind is not busy thinking about it. And then of course it goes to some other thoughts that are random, right? But at least for the moment you've let it out. And the benefit that I've found in writing advantages and disadvantages of my action is I can go back and revert back to it saying that I did it because of this. Because sometimes you don't remember why you started doing something. So
Yeah, that helps.
I personally found it helpful, and that has helped me do things rather than just think about it a lot. Like before I started, and the reason it took me 6 months or so is because life was in the way. Plus, I didn't have the proper tools, and I did want to know that how to put videos on YouTube, like how to create a channel and how to maintain my privacy, because I would hate to be famous personally. Um, I'm a low-key person, and that was the first hindrance. Like, I never want to be on YouTube because, why be famous? And I hate, like, what if you're going through any bus stand or any train station or an airport?
Random people walking up to you is going to be a nightmare.
Oh man, I wouldn't want to know anyone. I just want to go out, have coffee, have fun, you know? Like even in my class, I was just low key and it was fun.
Yeah, it was like when you could sit with your own book in some corner of a room, nobody disturbing you. Like, thank you for
Oh yeah.
leaving me alone. Just do you. Leave me
Yep.
alone.
Yeah, if you have some work, if you want me for something, I'm more than happy to help. But just please go away.
Yeah, D&D for the rest of the whatever time we have. Like, it's like when I really need to do something, I can approach people. But apart from that, I don't want to like talk to people generally for
Yeah,
the most part.
you sound like an introvert.
Yeah, I am.
Mm. Like
Took me
I
quite a while to be able to speak. Like even this speaking took me a lot of effort. It was
I
basically like my sixth grade English teacher.
Mhm.
She she was like I built a rapport with her, and she was always throwing ideas at me, and I was always like, that's a nonsensical idea. Like I was always countering them with some argument.
Mhm.
So I was able to think because I was reading books. I always knew different arguments to different things. So I was always countering something, whether it was nonsensical, whether it made sense or not, secondary. But I was countering something.
Yeah.
So she put me on the debate team, on the school debate team, and she told me go and speak on stage.
Oh wow, that must have been tough.
Yeah. So for the first time that I spoke was the time when I actually opened up speaking, and after that I started realizing how to speak.
Mm.
Then I
She
started to
must.
realize
Yeah.
how to tone your voice, how to use intonations. I started to read on stuff like that.
Wow. She must have been, she was a real teacher, I think, because she looked some talent in you and asked you to, go through it. Because I'm fine with being an introvert, and I do in my work, sometimes I do have to do public presentations and stuff. And there is a certain skill to it because you have to grasp the attention of audience. And there is a way that you say things, you have to observe the whole room. There's a lot that goes in it. And if somebody makes a snide comment, you have to be on your feet, to reply back, to tell that I'm
Yeah,
in control, not you.
yeah,
And
that
this.
happened. Actually, the thing is that I started to read more on it, how to formally, how to use your voice in a way.
Mhm.
I started reading more on those, and the most thing that I've heard is that using intonation was a far more better tool, and making things informal was a much better way of communicating than making things formal.
Yes.
So I started participating in a lot more debates and other competitions, so on and so forth. I was not participating by myself. My teacher was literally like, "You will participate on that, whether
Oh
you
man,
like it or not."
I don't know your teacher. You don't have to tell her name, but I have so much respect for her.
Yeah. So she forced me to it, and after that, after doing some debate competitions, winning a couple of them, and you know, I literally realized that being the best thing to do when speaking is literally free yourself, pick up the mic if you have to, and walk around the stage if walking is your thing.
Hmm.
I literally walk with my mic when I have to speak.
Yeah, and whatever grabs the audience attention, I think I have a good sense of humor. So during the public speaking, the way I start is, say there was one presentation that I was doing during my college time, and then there was, so what in our college, what they used to do is they'll have like a couple of students in the audience who'll check my presentation and give me marks. My teacher will give marks as well, but they have a say in like couple of points. So there was a dude that I knew that he will be taking notes on my presentation. And he gave a presentation earlier about some company that he invented and, was talking about it. And then
All right.
when I started the presentation and I said, I have an example of how to do a better company, and but I'm gonna take this dude's name and this dude's company because he's marking me. So I don't, no offense to your ideas, but your ideas suck, and this dude idea is brilliant because he's marking me. So I break the ice, I grab the attention of audience, and then everybody grabbed on to me, not literally,
Yeah.
but
People pay attention more.
yeah, they pay attention because they were waiting for the next snide comment that I'll pass.
Yeah, I always found using sarcasm, more roasting stuff, roasting tone that I
Mhm.
take, it
Yeah.
got more responses than making jokes. Like roasting people got more attention for me because I generally have that intonation within me to roast people rather than joke about them.
Yeah, I mean, with roasting, it depends, right? If you're a comedian on the stage, then the audience
No,
are in
even in
for it.
debates, the initial thought, the thing I start out with is I start to roast the idea in and of itself.
Mhm.
I would find a way to roast the idea, then I would start to roast the person and try to connect that with the topic. Like it would be the most garbage argument, but it would be so funny that people would forget I'm making an argument.
No, that it's a very fine line that you have to walk on for that,
Yeah.
right? Like in a debate setting, I assume that if you go in a debate, you are expecting somebody can roast you, right? So it's fair game. But in a professional setting, it depends on who your audience is. That's what I was
No,
trying to
even
get.
in professional settings, I had to give in a CA presentation
Mhm.
in a CA group. We were giving presentations, so I had to speak on certain topic. So when I went to start on the topic, I literally started. This is the most boring topic I've ever tried in my entire life. So let's just get on with it. Like I literally started with something like that, like something about making things a lot more informal and making things a lot more getting people out of their comfort zone just to bring them back.
Yeah. So just out of curiosity on that professional setting, was it your colleagues or classmates in that professional setting, or was it all unknown people or was it your clientele?
No, these are all in CA group. What happens is within the city, what happens, people come into the CA office and we
Mhm.
have this conferences.
Mhm.
We have organized conferences where there are allocation competition, there are presentations, so on and so forth, so on and so forth.
So is it
Where different professionals are there and students are there. All of us give presentations on different topics.
mm, but if saying that this is a boring topic, I don't think of it as roasting because when I heard the word roasting, I'm just thinking
I'm
about,
not roasting a person, I'm roasting the idea itself.
oh, I see. I got you now. Cool.
I'm
There was
roasting the idea
mm,
itself. Like we were talking about goods and service tax in India. So
mhm.
I was just like, this is the most garbage of something tax. I had like some full form of it, GST. I made some garbage ST full form, and I made that. Like I was literally making fun of the idea of the topic. So that what happens as soon as I made that, couple of people laughed. Other people were, like started to eye, and I got a reaction. As soon as I got a reaction, the next point that I made, people were literally focused on it.
Yeah, I mean GST does stand for general issued tax, so it is what it is. And
Yeah.
do you know a way that we can promote understanding about atheism in a better way?
To be honest, I'm a little more perplexed on that because there are so many different good ideas, yet I'm conflicted about those ideas the more I read on it.
Okay.
Like these communications that we're having that are doing on YouTube is a pretty good way. But since I am not an expert on it,
Yeah.
somewhere I am worried about the Dunning-Kruger effect or something that I say is not true, and somebody else who's an expert on the field might come and say like that guy was talking nonsense.
But don't you think of it as a learning opportunity?
Yes, obviously it is. Like I'm presenting on both sides of the coin.
Yeah.
What's conflicting me is that I am unable to evaluate which side of the coin is heavier, the optimistic side or the pessimistic side of the coin.
I see.
Like when I evaluate an idea of how to grow, like secular atheistic thoughts or secular thoughts or free thinking in general.
Yeah.
My contention is for every idea that I can think of or I can read out, is it a net positive or is it net negative? Is that idea net negative for what we're trying to do?
I see.
That is something I'm unable to evaluate in a much more proper manner.
So you're more worried about how it's going to pan out rather than the journey.
Yes, because in a sense, my issue is that as time progresses, we will get more secular in it. We will get less religious. Religion will slowly morph into something else. It will become more idealistic, and it'll be like as we move forward, it is going to subside.
Yeah.
But the problem with that subsiding of religion is not the end of the world. The problem is we are not scientifically tempered. We are not like getting better knowledge in stuff. Our other systems is still as garbage. We are not doing anything to change those systems.
True.
Our education system is absolute shit.
Yeah.
Our policies are generally half-assed. There are a lot of issues with our policy making. People are like, what good use is your critical thinking when we are unable to do something about in practical standpoint about it? What's the point of being an atheist, being a rationalist, being a secular guy when your efforts are not changing your country to a better place or the world in a better place?
Yeah. The way I think of it is just taking baby steps. So I know there is genuine problems in the world, like global warming is a thing. We should be focusing on more on that. I do understand that. But a lot of people don't focus on it due to, some of the religious aspects. So
I think that is what we should do. We should focus on global warming and tackle religion on global warming rather than other religious belief. Whenever religion brings up something, just tackle on global warming. Once the banner of global warming stands, and religious people have to pull out their banner from global warming issues,
yeah,
then you consider it as a victory because there's no evidence. We cannot disprove God and they cannot prove God. As of
yeah,
now, that is a standstill. So for me, the entire argument of God's existence is nonsensical for now.
mhm.
Like
But
philosophically, sure, we can debate about it, but on a practical standpoint, we do not achieve anything by debating God.
oh yeah, well, I kind of disagree in that way. And the reason is because let's put it this way. Before I was a atheist, I didn't care about stuff because I thought, oh, God will fix it, right? And I knew there was a global warming. I knew, glaciers are melting and all that stuff. But I didn't care about it because I was like, oh, well, God has written something. He must have planned something. So I just used to leave it at some other supernatural entity. Now I know that, we have to contribute. So just the general awareness helps. I am not contributing in a positive way about the global warming, but I'm checking my actions. So for example, just little things like I'm throwing my garbage or plastic and I try to recycle it. I'm aware about buying more glass bottles because it's easily recyclable than the plastic ones. So I've made these little changes. It may not be impacting much to the environment, but
Yeah, but you don't need to bring in religion to point out those things to religious people.
oh no, it doesn't. I'm just saying this was my pathway. I'm sure there's
Yeah,
many other
what
ways
I'm trying to
to.
say is yes, that is a factor, but my entire contention is that for the most part, uh, our struggle against religion should be more into stuff like this, where we are trying to tackle practical issues, and wherever religion stands against those practical issues, there you push back. For example, grifting against people's money, taking people's money, or stuff like anti-abortion laws, so on and so forth, like those sorts of things. There, I think we should tackle against religion, like practical grounds. Because if we are able to just keep religion out of those sort of sects, what people believe wouldn't matter much after that. I
There
think
is,
practical grounds is far more important as of now than the philosophical debate of the existence of a snowman and
yeah.
steroids.
No, well, steroids exist. But in saying that, there are a lot of people who brainwash other people in the name of religion, in the name of gods and stuff, right? So just making them aware of what if
Yes,
one
so
of the person,
raising awareness.
yeah, raising
Raising awareness.
awareness.
That's the part of education. Again, the point is education, our education systems, so on and so forth. The point again comes back to those aspects
Yes, so, but sometime
rather
you
than
can't,
religion in and of itself.
yeah, sometime you can't directly connect things, right?
Yeah, so
Like,
I think some point of time, as atheists or activists
hmm,
should literally keep religion out of arguments. Firstly, present the scientific facts on it. When they bring religion into it, then you start to bring in counter arguments to the religious ideologies.
but generally the arguments that I've been having, they do bring religion into it initially. And then you need to have some counter arguments. Like the most dumbest arguments I find from the theist is because it's written in a book, it's concrete, like Ayurveda, for example. Some people just like following that or whatever's written in Ayurveda. What I used to say is you can sell shit on the name of Ayurveda because some of the things work, some doesn't, right?
Yeah,
And when
again,
you're
those are
bringing that,
those are things open to testing.
yeah, but it's hard to convince people unless you really, so you need to have philosophical arguments against it rather than logical arguments. Because logical arguments, they're not attached to it due to logical reasons. Because
Again,
you are a,
I doubt you would be able to win philosophically in the first place, because anybody who's going to Ayurveda,
Mhm.
at least generally what happens is most people who go to Ayurveda are either already experienced some sort of positive effects on it, which means your philosophy is out of the window. Their experience triumphs philosophy firstly.
Mhm.
Secondly, they have witnessed somebody in their family get cured by Ayurveda, or they have they've been hammered since birth that Ayurveda cures everything. So unless you have a practical grounds to show Ayurveda does not work,
Mhm. I'm
or
not, yeah,
an XYZ proposition of Ayurveda does not work, we need, rather than showing that Ayurveda is nonsensical, what needs to be done is we need to take a set of propositions for Ayurveda, every proposition that is presented, disprove individual proposition and present that these propositions don't work. I do not care about the rest.
mhm,
Remove these.
yeah,
Like
but
start from this. Remove this. This does not work. This proposition does not work. We've tried it scientifically. This does not work. Random uh, controlled clinical trials don't show that this does not work. Take out
but
these propositions.
but do you think telling that to a person who believes in Ayurveda will work?
You don't need to tell it to a person after that. You need to tell it to authorities, government authorities, medical authorities, so on and so forth.
But
Once Ayurvedic doctors, those who claim to be Ayurvedic doctors, they tend to accept it. You need to get, when people who are in authoritative positions. In religion, it's always about people who are in authority. Unless they pass down that you people believe this, people in lower levels will not likely change their mind.
Oh yeah, I mean, most people believe it because there's a big doctor who said that, right?
Yes, who said
But
that?
but if you want to present it to the doctors who are literally making their living out of it, for them
Yes. So
it'll be
rather
hard to
than
change.
disproving the entire Ayurveda, saying that this entire field is nonsense, you say that this, you have 25 propositions, three propositions do not work. I do not care about the 22 for now. Remove these three at least.
Yes. Have you seen
Once
it?
you shorten the list to a manageable thing,
Hmm.
something that, or let's say you have three things that do not work and two things that work, you literally promote those two things and you remove these three. You say that these three don't work, there have been issues with these three, they have xyz issue, you make up any nonsense you want, just remove these three because they don't help.
Yeah.
You promote these two because these two have been shown to work. We ourselves in this community itself, in modern medicine, will show it that it works.
Yeah. But when I go in the real world, right,
Yeah.
I do have to have those skills to show that, to disprove something, right? Which I don't have. Like I don't have those skills. I don't have that medical knowledge.
Yeah, it is up to researchers, it is up to the medical professionals,
But
which is why research is a huge aspect of it.
but
And again, research funding, we are not getting research funding enough for these people.
yes, we don't get research funding, and there's a bigger problem here. So just to make people more aware, say if there are 10 people and 6 people are more aware on the scientific temper, and then, 4 people are pushing back, but we need to make those 4 people aware as well. It could be any arguments, whatever convince them, or at least get them to think. Then they can actually be more accepting, and there could be more funding for doing things better. Um, so yeah, it's up to the researchers to do that. It's up to the doctors to do that, and everything is cool. But in the end, people come in as well because they vote some of the people to be there. Like a doctor could be highly educated, but if it doesn't have customers, he won't have interest in doing, um, he a physician, he wouldn't want to be a doctor, right? Because it's all about people. So I think the conversations like what we are having also help as well, because you raised some good points, and you've raised some points against critical thinking, which I really like, because I do agree that sometimes critical thinkers criticize a lot rather than actually doing things. And
Yeah.
that, because I didn't think about it earlier, and it's a good point. The way I think of it is minimizing the risk, because if you do trial and error, it depends on person to person, right? Some people don't care. But if you do trial and error, sometime if you're failing a lot more times, it can demotivate you. So thinking helps, and knowing when to think and knowing when to do is another skill set, I think.
I would disagree on that because
Okay.
my very simple example would be take Amazon or Google, for example.
Yeah.
These are wildly successful companies.
Yes.
Amazon has Amazon has only 2 to 3 successes in their entire life.
Yeah.
Rest everything that they have done is a complete failure. So, and at no point were they critically examining it. They were just finding a business opportunity. They were jumping into it. If
Yeah.
they couldn't succeed, they buy a business that could.
Yeah.
Google
That
is
is.
literally Google calls itself an innovator company. It's not. It's not an innovation company. It's a buying company. Except for Gmail, Google Plus. So a couple of these innovations, Google has innovated jack shit. Anything it has done, it's absolutely failed.
Well, Google Plus is a failure. I was actually listening about it yesterday. Google has tried his hand in like 5 social network
Yeah. So
medias, and then
Google
they
is a
all failed.
buying company. So anything that you see Google use,
Mhm.
even in its search optimization, initially it was made by Google, and after every single optimization has been bought out virtually.
Yes. But you have to have ideas, right? So
Yes, coming up with
Amazon,
ideas. This is where I think critical thinkers are not better idea producers than non-critical thinkers in that sense. Both have same amount of ideas. It is just that critical thinkers ponder more over the ideas compared to. And what I have seen in practical usage is that people who jump in feet first, they tend to be able to, navigate through the weeds much more effectively than people who think first. What happens is when you think first, you end up thinking about a lot of things that might end up shortening your duration, but may not have a significant impact at the end. But people have already jumped in and now finding solution. They do not care about possible problems. They have a problem. This problem at hand is solved. Nothing else matters at that point.
Do you think
we have possibilities to think about?
Yeah. Do you think it should be a balanced approach?
Yes, obviously. You need to have enough thought into the program to jump in first. But at some point you need to let go and jump in.
Yeah.
That is the most difficult thing for a critical thinker to do.
Yes. I hope it change. I would love to have a conversation with you again, Anish, because
definitely.
You have so many different ideas and thoughts. 1 hour is just not enough, and I think we've run by 1 hour very quickly, and I didn't even feel. I just looked at the time. I was like, "What?" Glad I had coffee. Yeah. But before we leave, do you want to say anything to our audience?
Nothing much. Just enjoy life. There's nothing after life, so just enjoy it.
Yeah, that's good advice, because we need to enjoy life. We just got one shot at it, and we don't know when it's
after you die. And if there is a God, just pray that He kills your soul. Like, no heaven, please. At least, like, if you are religious, pray for me that after I die, God kills my soul. If you're religious, pray for me that much.
Yeah,
that would be the biggest thing I could hope for.
Yeah, but praying does fuck all.
Do that, but still.
Yeah, some people say that what happens after dying, and God will do this and that and this, and I'm like, once I'm dead, I won't care. And how did it feel before you were born? And it's a big philosophical thought. And as I say always, let us think, and you can call me atheist.